Laird. Matt, good evening.
Good evening, panel. Are we sleepwalking into an apocalypse on climate change, as stated by the TV presenter Chris Packham, especially with the Prime Minister U-turning and reneging on all his climate zero targets?
Thank you, Matt. Big announcement in the last few hours from the Prime Minister. The ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel cars to be delayed now to 2035. Exemption of the poorest when it comes to upgrading boilers, and more time for the rest of us on all of this as well. Stephen Flynn, you wrote to Rishi Sunak about this today and said that effectively he was throwing in the towel when it came to climate change. Is he not just being pragmatic in the face of a cost of living crisis?
No, the complete opposite. And this isn't just about climate change. We, whether we like it or not, are in a global race right now when it comes to reaching net zero. Now, Scotland is an energy-rich nation, and we want to continue to be an energy-rich nation which maximises jobs and opportunities and economic growth for the people who live and work in Scotland, and particularly those folk in the northeast of Scotland who I have the privilege of representing. And what the Prime Minister has done today is he sent out a clear signal that he is not interested in net zero. So for each and every business, each and every investor looking at the United Kingdom, they will look at us and they will see a government that isn't aligned to their aspirations. And that's in stark contrast to the United States of America with their Inflation Reduction Act. That's in stark contrast to the European Union. This is backwards Britain at its worst. It is unforgivable. It's going to do lasting damage to our reputation, but most importantly, to jobs and opportunities for people right across Scotland. That is not acceptable.
Honest, Lisa, what are you going to do about this? Does your target remain 2030? How much of this is reserved, or do you have to shift things in Scotland now as well?
I mean, we're still absorbing what the Prime Minister has said today, which is quite frankly terrifying. Stephen's right about it discouraging investment, but this is about the future of our planet, our obligations internationally. I remember it wasn't that long ago when we were talking about in Glasgow at COP26, and the presenter with tears in his eyes that we weren't going to be able to save those nations who would be inundated by sea level rises. Those things will affect us here too. This is going to affect our ability to grow our crops. It's going to affect our ability to, look after our economy. We need to bring in that investment.
So does Scotland have the power to ignore this and continue with the targets that we had in place?
Scotland will absolutely work to the targets that we've got. We haven't yet absorbed how the changes in Westminster might affect that because, of course, we do not have all the powers of an independent country here. It's one of the reasons why the Greens are so keen on Scottish independence is so we could have those powers here. But we are still moving ahead with policies that we know make a difference.
So hang on, how would that work? So that would mean that you could go to Newcastle and buy a petrol or diesel new car and bring it back to Scotland, but you wouldn't be able to buy one here, effectively.
Looking at exactly how these policies would interface between the countries is something that we need to do. I mean, of course, there's a general election next year, and the people of the UK will have the ability to vote on whether they think tackling the climate crisis is an urgency. Is it an emergency, or is it not?
So you definitely won't push this back to 2035. As far as you're concerned, the target is still 2030.
It has to be. This is a climate emergency. It's not a climate wait and see. After the summer we've had with wildfires, floods, record heat waves, this is just the terrifying beginning of the breakdown of our biosphere. Everything depends on having a livable planet to hand on to our children and grandchildren. We have to take action right now, and some of it is pretty straightforward. You've already seen this in Scotland. I'm sure many of you know people or are yourselves benefiting from free bus travel for everyone 21 and under, for example. That is how we tackle the climate emergency, by changing how we live, and we can do that for the better.
That's what the Scottish